Go ahead.
This is Frankie Edgar, UFC fighter. Welcome to the Trevor Airdrie Show.
Welcome everybody to episode 19 of the Trevor Airdrie Show. I am your host, Trevor Airdrie. Special shout out to Corey Sharon for the theme song, Get Back Up. You know guys, I took some time off with some medical issues, and that's why you haven't seen a video for a while, or the show for a while. But, you know, I'm currently in the process of getting better, and hopefully I can put this all in the past. That being said, without anything further, on to the show. The recap, sponsored by Street Soldier, sick swag at sick prices. To get yours, you can go to www.strtsoldier.com. Alright, UFC Fight Night 54, it took place in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. The main event was Rory MacDonald versus Tarek Seferdine. You know what guys, I did not expect this fight to go down this way. I did pick Rory MacDonald to be the winner, but that being said, I thought if he was going to win, it was going to be a decision. And if there was going to be a knockout, I thought it was going to be Tarek Seferdine with some form of kick that would knock Rory MacDonald out. Boy, was I wrong. Rory MacDonald brought the fire. He landed a mean left hand, dropped Seferdine to the mat, ground and pound. It was over. It finished at 128 of round 3. And Rory MacDonald makes it one step closer to the UFC Welterweight Championship. Co-main event of the night, Rafael Asuncao versus Brian Caraway. This fight kind of went exactly like I thought it was going to go. You know, 30-27, three ways. Asuncao dominated the fight, but Brian Caraway's chin is one of the best in the UFC Bantamweight division. And, you know, Asuncao tried his best to finish him, but he couldn't quite get the job done, and won unanimously. That also, in the same breath as Rory MacDonald, makes Asuncao one step closer to that UFC Bantamweight Championship. That's eluded him due to injury. Like, he was supposed to be the one that fought Renan Barão, but got injured. TJ Dillashaw got into that spot, and the rest is history. Before that, we had the first ever UFC Tough Nations Canadian winner in Chad Laprise. He fought Adonis Cedeno. You know, Chad Laprise, that effective striking, the distance, the closing off the cage. I saw at least 4 UFCers tweet that Chad Laprise cuts off the cage better than 20-year veterans of the sport. You know, when he finally gets in tune with that knockout power that I've seen in the past, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. The cutoff to the cage, the knockout power, you know, even the wrestling and the wrestling defense. He's going to make a big statement in the UFC within the next, you know, 2014, the rest of 2014, going into 2015, you know, and that unblemished record just makes it that much more logical to put stock in him now. Before that, we had our other Tough Nations winner, Elias Theodorou. You know, he's a character, but he always seems to get the job done. I believe he's moved to 11-0 now in the cage. Second fight in the octagon. He dismantled Bruno Santos. He won as well, unanimous decision. Not quite as heavily tilted as Laprise's unanimous decision, but nonetheless, 3 ways, 29-28. And round 3 definitely sealed the deal for Elias. You got to think, a lot of guys gas out coming into round 3. Elias picked him up and slammed him 3, maybe even 4 times in that round. And Santos just looked tired. Elias once again outworks an opponent, gets his hand raised in victory. And like I was saying about Laprise, an unblemished record carries you a far way in the UFC. So look out for him coming up in 2015 as well. Before that, we had my favorite to actually win the Tough Nations middleweight division in Nordine Taleb. I thought it was going to be a toss-up between him and Elias. I just thought maybe Taleb could catch Elias with a lucky punch and finish him. Not the case. Nordine Taleb being one of those guys that I think he's the only guy in UFC history to lose on 2 tough series. He went up against Li Jinglang. It was a split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 30-27 for Taleb. I scored a 29-28 for Taleb. It was just effective throughout the cage. He looked to have a little bit of a foot issue by the end of it, maybe a broken foot, maybe a sprained foot. He just looked to need help getting out of the cage. Starting off the main card on the night, we had Mitch Gagnon versus Roman Salazar. Gagnon is a beast. I will say that about Mitch Gagnon. He just comes in and gets the job done, and he's quickly climbing up the bantamweights. I wouldn't be surprised if his next opponent is a top 10 opponent. It kind of has to be at this point. He's on a long winning streak. He is very talented. He's got a great submission game. He has the power to knock you out. But on Saturday night, he won via rear naked choke at 2:06 of the first round. And then I'm gonna go through the undercard like I always do pretty quickly. Darren Cruikshank, he defeated Anthony Nujikiani, unanimous decision, 30-27, 3 ways. Olivia Elban Mercier defeated Jake Lindsay via inverted triangle Kimura. If you have the chance to go back and watch that is an incredible transition into a submission. And Olivier Aubin Mercier, with the exception of the loss of Chad Laprise, is going to be another up-and-coming, talented Canadian. And, TriStar Gym has a lot of great talent right now. And they're definitely a gym you got to look out for in 2015. Before that, we had Paul Felder defeating Jason Segal. It was a split decision, 29-28, 28-29, 29-28. I can't really say much about this. I actually did score the fight for Felder, 29-28. I'm a big fan of Jason Segal, but it was a tough call to make, but I think the judges got it right in the end. And then starting out the prelims card, I guess they were all on Sportsnet 360, but in the United States they were on FX. Chris Kalidas defeated Patrick Houlihan 29-28, 29-28, 29-28, unanimous decision. And Chris Kalidas took that fight on 5 days' notice. The UFC has to be standing up, clapping their hands for a fighter that takes a fight on 5 days' notice, goes to a unanimous decision against a guy that's really tough, and Patrick Houlihan, and made a statement. Just kept grinding, and he actually by the end of the fight looked like the less exhausted of the two. And then the ones on UFC Fight Pass, Terminator defeated Matt Dwyer, and Pedro Munhoz defeated Jarrett Sanders. So that was UFC Fight Night 54. I'm not really going to touch too much on UFC Fight Night 53 because, quite frankly, I didn't watch it. I've watched the main event now, but Gunnar Nelson versus Rick Story, which was a hell of a fight, but I didn't watch the rest of the card enough to comment on it. So coming up next, we have In the News. In the News is sponsored by M&A Sports Media. We're your one-stop shop for, you can see this video on M&A Sports Media. We go out to the events. You can meet me or Chad at any event, really. One of us generally is there, sometimes both of us. And just check out www.mnasportsmedia.com for any information that we have coming up. Alright, so in the news this week, you gotta say the title picture is getting very congested. You gotta look at all the injuries that have taken place. There's so many guys that are on 3, 4, 5, 6 fight win streaks. Asunaseo with the 7-1. You have Ronda Rousey. She has Kat Zingano next. And maybe a fight with Cyborg coming up. Let's hope. Bantamweight division, you have TJ Dillashaw as your champion, Dominic Cruz as a contender, Uriah Faber really as a contender, and Rafael Asuncao as a contender. Featherweight, you have Chad Mendez, Jose Aldo's your champion. You also have Cub Swanson, Frankie Edgar, who are fighting later on this year. And Conor McGregor, for obvious reasons, who's been on a tear. And the list goes on and on. Like, I could go through every division and I could pick at least 4 to 5 credible challengers for every champion. And great news for the UFC, but bad news for any of those guys that feel deserving of the title shot, because they can only have one title shot at a time, and then these guys have to fight other guys. It's just one of those things in mixed martial arts that it's unfortunate, but sometimes you have to bite the bullet and take another fight. Also, coming out of the Brazilian MMA Athletic Commission this week, we had Peter Hallman, who tested positive for steroids after UFC Fight Night 51 in his loss to Gleison Tibau. That's going to be a big hit for Hallman because, one, they won Fight of the Night that night. That $50,000 bonus does not go to him anymore because the UFC holds all bonuses and paychecks until after the medical and drug testing comes back. And he's not a big enough name in the UFC that, it wouldn't surprise me within a couple days if we hear him getting released from the promotion. Also, we have a big night of fights coming up for December 13th. We have UFC on Fox 13. It's main evented by Junior Dos Santos versus Stipe Miocic. Stipe Miocic is looking to cement his way into the top 5. Junior Dos Santos is looking to add to the win of Mark Hunt. And it's a very intriguing fight, but I would actually go with Stipe Miocic in that fight. He's just on a tear lately, and I believe he has what it takes to defeat Junior Dos Santos. As well on that card, we have the return of Nate Diaz versus Rafael Dos Anjos. And it's a pretty big card, no pun intended, with the heavyweight division fully on display. Alistair Overeem faces Stefan Struve on that card, and Gabriel Gonzaga squares off against Matt Mitrione. So it's a lot of big fights on that card. Also on that night, we have World Series of Fighting, which I'm pretty sure is the first time they will be going up against the UFC, and they're going to compete with that card with the main event of Rusmar Polaris, the current World Series of Fighting welterweight champ, against former UFC title contender John Fitch. And all those fights take place on December 13th, so if you're a World Series of Fighting fan, you're going to have fights that night. If you're a UFC fan, you're going to have fights that night. And finally, my last piece of news of the week, we have Christine Cyborg Santos. She is on track to make her 135 debut, and she looks to do so on Invicta FC 10 on December the 5th. So all you Invicta fans out there, if she can make weight and she wins that fight, she has to be the person that fights Ronda next. Like Dana White has to, swallow back a little bit and just understand that fight needs to happen, because until Ronda Rousey defeats Cyborg or vice versa, you're always going to have that coming up. It's going to drive him nuts at every presser. Just let the fight happen and let the cards fall where they may. Now it's time for Trevor's Corner. Trevor's Corner is one of my segments. If you're familiar with the show, it's where I go over a current topic. You guys can send me in any topic you want me to discuss. Let it be MMA, pro wrestling, you name it. I will talk about it. I will rant about it. It's what I do. This week on Trevor's Corner, the Canadian future of MMA is looking pretty bright, so I wanted to touch on that. We have, a weekend where Canadians go 7-2 on a UFC card, featured prominently on that card as well. TriStar Gym had, I believe, a 4-0 record on that card with Olivier Aubin-Mercier, Chad Laprise, Nordine Taleb, and Rory McDonald winning. And it's a good time to be a Canadian MMA fan. Like, we thought, with a lot of the, with GSP retiring and Mark Hominick retiring, we thought that we were going to go into a little bit of a lull. But Rory McDonald, Chad Laprise, Elias Theodoro, those guys have been stepping up and just making it happen. As well, you got guys that, every single time I see a Canadian MMA card, I always wonder, where are these guys? Like, these guys are really talented. Guys like Ryan Dixon, who just won the Hard Knocks Championship on the weekend. You have Kyle Preplik, who's an absolute cardio monster and will finish or grind you out to get that brutal decision by the end of the night. And every single time I see Preplik fight, it's almost like a fight of the night caliber fight. And then Chris Hordesky, pride out of Adrenaline Training Center in London. You got him, who has an incredible record, a hell of a fighter, great knockout power, who's fighting on World Series of Fighting this coming weekend. And then Malcolm Gordon, who is fighting on PFC 3 coming up next week. I always wonder why these guys haven't made it yet. That being said, I do see a bright future for all of them involved. And, it spoils us local Canadian fans when we get to see one of these guys or a Jesse Gross or whatnot just absolutely tear it up in the cage. But the future's bright. Like I said, Hordesky, we have Ryan Ford fighting on World Series of Fighting this week. And yeah, it's a good day to be a Canadian MMA fan. Oh, and not to mention Ronda Marcos on the current season of Tough 20 and her huge upset win over Tisha Torres, who was the number 3 ranked strawweight in the UFC. So it's a good day. And finally, we have the rundown. It's, where I run down a card that's coming up on the weekend. We do not have a UFC card this weekend, but I will go with one of my top 3 promotions going right now in World Series of Fighting. They have World Series of Fighting 14 take place this weekend. Main evented by Ryan Ford, Canadian, versus Jake Shields. I have Ford dominating this fight. I have him knocking out Shields in the first round. I think Shields is more on a decline in his career, where Ryan Ford is just rocketing to the moon at this point. Co-main event, we have Shmilo Rama versus Derek Mayman. I have Shmilo Rama taking this one also first round via TKO. And then before that, Chris Hordesky, like I said, out of Adrenaline Training Center in London. He's fighting Louis Hayes, and I have Hordesky winning via second round TKO. Don't think he's going to come out guns a-blazing, but I think he's going to dictate the pace in the first round, come out in the second round, and just sandblast this guy. And then starting out the main card on NBC Sports, we have Tough Nations Canadian Luke Harris versus Jared Hamahan. I have Harris winning via decision. I think it's going to be another good weekend for Canadian MMA fans. And then we have the undercard fights that stand out. Tim Hague versus Craig Hudson. I have Hudson via third round KO. I believe that's going to be a great fight to watch. Michael Hill generally brings it. I have Hill winning via decision. And yeah, there's 11 fights this weekend. 4 on the main card. I believe they're on TSN2 here in Canada. So make sure you check out World Series of Fighting 14. Cheer on guys like Ryan Ford, Chris Hordesky, Luke Harris, and so on and so forth. Well, thank you for joining me for this episode of the Trevor Airdrie Show. I will be back next Wednesday to do a full rundown of PFC 3, as well as the results coming out of World Series of Fighting 14. Trevor's Corner, if you want to post on this video what you want me to talk about, like I said, pro wrestling, MMA, you name it, I will talk about it. Comment it on Facebook. visit www.mnasportsmedia.com to watch this video. And as well, I'd like to thank Street Soldier for being a great sponsor of this. And without anything further, dream it, believe it, achieve it. I'm Trevor Airdrie, signing off.